everyone. Welcome to the Breaking Moment podcast. My name is Regine Bowe, and I am a social worker who wants to give you hope, encourage you, and help you feel less alone in your healing journey. This podcast is dedicated to helping you heal, learn, and grow to become a better version of yourself. Through education and personal experience, I will discuss topics around mental health and spirituality. So, let's get started on today's episode. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Breaking Moment podcast. I'm your host, Regine Bowe, and I hope that your year is going well. This is the first episode of 2024, and I hope that so far you are following your New Year's resolutions. I hope that you are having a good first week of the year, and I hope that you are all doing well. So in today's episode, we are going to talk about the importance of self-love. I felt that we should talk about this because as we go into the new year, we might have put a lot of resolutions on our list. We might have just had such a long year last year. And I just think it's important to love ourselves through this healing journey. I think one of the most important things through the healing journey is learning to love yourself because of all you've been through, all that you have overcome, loving yourself for who you are, accepting yourself, loving yourself through your mistakes. And I just think it's an important component to have in this journey because when we love ourselves, it makes the biggest difference in the world. It changes how we conversate to ourselves. It changes how we show up in the world. It changes who we interact with. It's such an important piece in our journey, and it will dictate a lot in our life. And I think it's just important to have self-love. And I want to talk about why it's so important. And hopefully after this episode, you will learn to start loving yourself, even if you've made too many mistakes, even if you aren't where you want to be, even if you haven't accepted all of you, even if you have too many flaws. And I'm saying these things because I was there. How can I love myself if this? How can I love myself if that? How can I love myself if this? How can I love myself if that? But you can. I hope that this is one of the things that you are able to work on as you start the new year is learning to love yourself, because as we continue to go through the year, it's important to know in 2024 that you deserve to be loved. You deserve to love yourself, and that can get you so far in your healing journey. So we're going to get started. We're going to talk about what self-love is. We're going to discuss why self-love is important in our life. We're going to talk about what happens when we don't work on self-love. And we're going to talk about some ways to increase self-love. So I want you to think about someone you love. I'll give you a second to think. This can be a dog, a family member, a spouse, a friend, a boyfriend, a girlfriend, or whoever else I didn't list. I want you to think about that person, someone that you love. And when you think about love, what comes to mind? Maybe you want to protect them. Maybe you just want to be there for them. Maybe you want to buy them things. Maybe you want to support them. Maybe you want to encourage them. Maybe you want to be honest and truthful with them. Maybe you want to respect them. Maybe you want to see them succeed and do big things in life. Maybe you just want to see them happy. So as we go throughout this episode, I want you to think of that person. In the same way you love that person, I want you to start thinking about how you can give that same love to yourself. And I wanted to have this reflection because it's important that we realize that if we can love others, why can't you love yourself? You deserve to be loved too, right? So I'm sure you've all heard of the word neglect. So I want you to think about what that means to you. And what scenarios come to mind when you think of the word neglect? Maybe you think of a parent neglecting a child from the things he or she needs, like food, water, shelter, safety, attention, etc. Maybe you think of someone neglecting their job responsibilities. Maybe they're supposed to do a certain thing and they just stop doing it, and now it affects many other people. Maybe you think of someone neglecting their duties as a parent at home. According to the Cambridge Dictionary, neglect is defined as a situation in which you do not give enough care or attention to someone or something, or the state of not receiving enough care or attention. So now that we know what neglect is, and now that we've heard some scenarios, or maybe you thought of some scenarios on your own, now I want you to think of yourself. Are you neglecting yourself? Are you providing the things that you need to grow in life? Are you giving yourself the love you need? Are you giving yourself the care and attention that you need? Because if I'm being honest, I feel like a lot of us probably neglect ourselves, meaning we don't give ourselves what we need. We give it to everyone else, but we don't give it to ourselves. And if this is you, it's tough to even accept it, because it's hard. It's hard to accept something that we either aren't aware of or we are aware of, but we don't know what to do. And I'm saying this because I've been there where, and I've shared this many times, where I've done and given to everyone else but myself. And then it's crazy how when you start to, it makes you emotional, because it's like, wow, I used to never take myself out to eat, or I used to never just spend 10 minutes with myself every day before I interact with everyone else, or wow, I never even listened to myself. Meaning, say you had a thought, or say you had an idea, or say you had something that you felt passionate about, but someone else didn't believe in it, or someone else thought it was dumb, and then you just threw it to the side. You just, nope, they're right, I'm wrong. So you're not allowing yourself to speak. You're not allowing yourself to be you. I feel like so many of us probably neglect ourselves in a way. We do things for everyone else, but we neglect our needs. Like maybe you need to have quiet time. Maybe you need to take an hour a day to yourself because you get overwhelmed, because your anxiety is so bad. Like sometimes we have to think about what we need. And I thought of the word neglect when I thought of this topic, because I think we do neglect ourselves. We neglect what we want because we assume that it's about everyone else, but not realizing that if we can't be okay, if we can't take care of ourselves and give ourselves things that we need to get through this life, the love that we need to get through this life, then you can't do all those other things for everyone else. And I'm going to tell you something from experience. You can do your best in giving to everyone else, but you will burn out. It will happen, because when you feed into everyone else and you love everyone else, who is feeding you? Who is loving you? Like, I feel like that speaks volumes itself, because it's like when you look at it from that perspective, it's like, whoa, you have to ask yourself that. Who is? And you have to do some reflection, really do the work about, what are you giving to yourself too? Are you loving yourself too? Are you nurturing yourself too? Or are you neglecting yourself? Are you dismissing yourself? Are you even validating yourself? You have to ask yourself these questions, because it's important. It's going to be important. It affects how you show up in the world. If you have no self-love, and I'm getting off track, but I'm just so passionate about this. If you don't love yourself, you will settle. You will settle for things that don't deserve your love. You will settle for people. You will settle for jobs. You will settle for places. And it's so important that you live your life to your fullest potential, because you only have one life. All right, I'm going to try to get back to the script, but it's just... So according to positivepsychology.com, self-love is defined as a state of appreciation for oneself that grows from actions that support our physical, psychological, and spiritual growth. So self-love is validating oneself, being compassionate to self, showing up for oneself, taking care of our needs, accepting who you are, flaws and all. So why is it important? According to StarMed, when we accept ourselves for who we are and recognize our worth, it impacts our self-esteem. So the thing about self-love, it's all connected. Self-love, self-esteem, self-worth, self-love, self-esteem, self-worth. These things affect you as an individual. What affects you as an individual will affect your world. It'll affect how you interact with yourself. It'll affect how you interact with others. It affects how others interact with you. It affects how the world interacts with you. It affects what jobs you take. It affects what relationships you're in. It is so important. It is such an important part of life to learn about self-love and the importance of it, and to start implementing it in your life. Because yes, it doesn't happen overnight. It really doesn't. It is hard work. Hard work, but it is worth it, because what comes out of when you love yourself, your world changes. The way you look at yourself changes. It protects us from anything that harms us or our self-worth. For example, anything spiritually, mentally, physically, and this can be people, job, places. So once you develop this love for yourself, once you start to understand the importance of this, you won't let certain things affect you, meaning you will protect things more. You will protect your spiritual being. You will protect your mental health, meaning say you used to people please, and you struggle with anxiety, and you learn to love yourself, then you might realize I gotta set a boundary around these people because they take a lot of my energy, or I have to not hang out this place because it triggers me so much, and I can't let this stop me from what I want to do in life. You start learning, you start speaking to yourself differently, you start weighing out the pros and cons. When we don't love ourselves, we just do whatever because we don't love. Like that's why I asked you that question about love. Who do you love right now? Think about someone you love, the dog, the spouse, whoever. You would do anything for them. I'm sure when you love someone, when you really care and love someone, you would do anything to help them. You would do anything to help them and help them grow, help them feel loved, help them feel accepted. Think about all that for yourself. The thing is, once you get that love, you will start learning that these people aren't even worth it anymore because they're making my self-worth go down. They aren't respecting my boundaries. They are messing with my spiritual being, my spiritual side of things. They are affecting my mental health. They are taking me away from my purpose in life. Like it helps you look at life differently, because when you have that love for yourself, like you had that love for your spouse or that friend, you will protect yourself. You want to protect them. So that means saying no, because you know that no to them is that yes to you. That means saying, I'm sorry, I'm not going out tonight because I just work so much and I'm drained, and you guys kind of pressure me to do these things that I don't want to do. So I'm going to say no to that. It just protects you from so much once you gain that self-love, because you will start looking out for yourself. You will start talking kinder to yourself. You won't always say, oh my God, you're so dumb, you're so stupid, you're so whatever, however you talk to yourself when things don't go right or just day to day. You will start looking at your mirror and saying, you know what, you tried today and I'm proud of you. I know it's not what you wanted, but you did your best. I want to give you an example. I have always been extremely hard on myself. You can ask anybody that knows me. Extremely. Sports, school, everything. Always hard on myself. I'm not saying it's not good to challenge yourself and to put some expectations on yourself, but it's important to still talk to yourself like you would want to talk to any other human being. So when I started to develop self-love and work on myself, I realized that I talk to myself differently now. Like, where before I would get so mad and put so much expectation and pressure, I can look at myself now and say, you know what, Regine, you tried today and I'm proud of you. And then I move forward with my day. It speaks volumes, because I used to never do that, because I never had that love for myself, because I thought that the love I was supposed to give was to everyone else. But no, I have to give some to me, because I'm the most important person in my life, because depending on what I do affects everyone else. If I don't have self-love, then how can I love anybody else? I heard that saying so much, but I understand it now. The same way I'm mad at myself and I'm cussing myself out, or the same way I'm not respecting my boundaries, or the same way I am putting so much expectation on myself, I'm reflecting that on other people. It didn't hit me until I was in a serious relationship and I was seeing some of the things that I do to myself that unconsciously I might have been doing to that person, meaning I'm being so hard on myself. I'm thinking I got to be perfect. So then I'm thinking they got to be perfect because that's how I viewed love. But I had to do the work and realize that that's not, I had to love myself first. So when I started giving myself grace, I started giving people around me grace. When I started respecting my boundaries, I started to respect other people's boundaries. It really is like a reflection. It's like a mirror. What you do to yourself is what you're going to do to other people. If you talk nasty to yourself, cuss yourself out, and say you're stupid, you're dumb, you're probably going to do that to other people. If you are a perfectionist, you're probably going to want other people to be perfect. It's like a mirror. So that's why when I say you're the most important person in your world, I don't mean it as a selfish thing, because you just have to think of it from a perspective. Like, when I'm good, when I take care of me, it's going to reflect on other people. When I make sure I'm okay, when I love me, when I accept me, then I can do that for others. How can you accept others' flaws if you don't even accept your own? And that's the questions we have to ask ourselves. These are questions I had to ask myself. And as hard as it is, it makes the biggest difference when you start to develop that love for yourself, when you start to understand why you are the way you are. That's why this healing journey is not easy, but it's worth it, because once you start to develop this love for yourself, then you can give that same love back to the people you love, to the people you're around, to the people you're in relationships with, or whoever. It's so important. Self-love is important because it affects our confidence and how we show up in the world, who we allow to have access to us, and vice versa. And it affects our decisions. So what happens when we don't work on self-love? It affects our self-esteem, right? It affects how we perceive ourselves. And how we perceive ourselves will show up in things around us. So if we don't see ourselves as strong and smart and beautiful or handsome and relentless and encouraging and all these amazing things, then it's going to show up in our relationships. It's going to show up in how we talk to people and how we behave. It's when I think about when people just don't take care of themselves and love themselves and accept themselves, it makes me wonder, how do we see ourselves? And that's why self-esteem goes into it. Because if you don't love yourself, then you aren't going to take care of yourself. Just like if you don't love someone, you're not going to take care of them. If you don't love that spouse, it's going to show, right? You're not going to maybe take them out to eat. You're not going to want to see them do their best, maybe. You're not going to care for them and make sacrifices for them and want it to work. Same for yourself. If you love yourself, you're going to make sacrifices. You're going to say no even when it hurts that other person, because you know that you need that yes. You're going to make the sacrifices for yourself. You're going to start speaking your truth. You're going to start standing up for yourself. How many times have you not said what was on your mind because you didn't want to hurt someone else's feelings? Or you shut down your dreams because someone else said it was stupid? That's not fair. If you believe in it, who cares what anybody else thinks? Feel like someone's disrespecting you? Stand up for yourself. There's a way to say things, obviously, but it goes a long way. So it will affect our self-esteem when we don't love ourselves. So if you see yourself as not good enough, you will act that way. You will say, I'm not good enough. You will settle. Which brings me to my next thing. What happens when we don't work on self? You settle. Settling means, to me in my terms, what settling means is when we live a life or we do things that are less than us, that are less than what God wants for us. Point blank period. That's what I think settling is. We can settle with people. Maybe you're with a friend group. Actually, my pastor talked about this the other day. Sometimes we want to be friends with people since elementary school. And if that's you, that's great. But the person you were in elementary school, of course, then it's different than who you are at 50 or 40 or 30 or whatever. And sometimes we do outgrow people, not because they're not good enough, but because our paths just don't align anymore. What your path is leading you to is different than where they're going. The last thing you want is someone to hold you back from what is out there for you, what God has out there for you. So we can settle with people. We can settle at places. We can settle at a job for 50 years and say, well, I'm comfortable here and I'm not really that smart, so I can't go to school, or I'm not really that smart, so I can't take that other job. And we can settle there for 40 years and be miserable. Or we can step out our comfort zone and see what's out there, because you might be working at a fast food restaurant, but you might really have manager responsibilities deep down. Maybe you're really a leader, but you're at a job that you're not leading. You just never know what you're really capable of. And once you start to develop the self-love for yourself, once you start to really discover who you are, just because you struggle with low self-esteem does not mean that's who you are. It's about digging deep and figuring out who you are, because at the end of the day, we all have flaws. So before you say, I'm too anxious, I'm too much, I'm too overweight, I'm too weird, I don't fit in, I'm too far behind, I messed up, I have too many kids, does not define you. So that's why it's important to work on the self-love, because even when you start to love yourself, you will start to accept those pieces that you do not like. And it goes a long way. And I've talked about this. Some of the things I struggled with was not fitting in, feeling behind, anxiety, overthinking, not feeling good enough, perfectionism, people pleasing, so many things I struggle with. And I remember thinking all those things made me too much for whatever else was out there. Meaning, I can't do a podcast because I struggle with all these things. I can't be a therapist and go to school and finish school because I struggle with these things, or because my family didn't get a master's degree. So every time we contemplate and say, I can't, you'll learn that once you start loving yourself and start having compassion for yourself, for the things you didn't have, for the things you don't know, for your flaws, you will start to love yourself and accept yourself, and it'll start to move you through your journey still. Yes, those things will be there. Once you love yourself, you won't let yourself settle, because you want what's best for yourself. Just like you want what's best for that loved one you thought about earlier this episode. You won't let yourself settle. You will work on your self-esteem because you want the best for yourself. And another thing we can settle in is relationships, which that can be a whole nother episode. But some of us might be in that situation now where we're settling because that's all we know. Another thing that happens when we don't work on ourselves is we become over-involved in other people's lives. So, for example, the people pleasing, maybe overworking. You might literally feel like you're married to your job because you find... what happens is when we can't give ourselves the love, we find it in other things and people. So it might be that relationship. You're in that relationship that's probably bad for you, maybe, because at least you're getting the attention you want. But what if you just gave the attention to yourself? Or you might be at that job overworking, like constantly working. You're always at work pretty much. And even when you have free time, you pick up extra shifts to go to work because you start to find the love in the work. Like, oh, at least work gives me something out of this. I get money, or my boss tells me good job. And I'm not saying these things aren't good, but it should not take over your love for yourself. Because when you love yourself, you won't overwork yourself, because then you will respect your boundaries and what you need, because you still need the proper rest. You still need to balance life with work and maybe family and yourself. We can just become over involved in other things when we don't feel self-love, because we will find the love in those things. Another thing that happens when we don't love ourselves is we seek validation from other people or things. And that kind of ties in maybe to with the other one a little bit, which it could be achievements. You might start to overwork because you love getting the award every year at work because that makes you feel loved. Or you might seek validation from people on social media, or you might seek validation from friends. Like, you love that, so you let that override anything else. Something else that happens when we don't work on self-love is we just won't be happy, because we'll believe that happiness and love is everywhere else but ourselves. If this is you, I want you to think about this, because it's like, okay, you overworked yourself to death, meaning you overwork, now you're burnt out, you still overwork and you're burnt out because you just keep seeking that validation and seeking that award from work and seeking that validation from others. Now you're people pleasing, you're giving to everyone else, now you're tired. When are you going to stop running? When are you going to stop? When are you going to just stop and say, I'm going to just start focusing on myself and giving myself what I need? I'm telling you this from experience. This was me. I needed the validation because I thought that's what love was. and then constantly giving to others and seeing others happy. But then it was always like something was missing. Something's missing. And if that's you, this is your sign. Your sign to start working on yourself. I'm not saying it's not going to happen overnight, because it's really not. But you can start today. This is a new year. Start the year right. Don't keep searching for other things to find the love when you can give it to yourself. Another thing is it'll affect relationships. It might cause you to be toxic, jealous, not trust people, not trust your partner. Because if you don't love yourself, if you don't trust yourself, if you don't have these attributes to yourself, then how can you expect it to happen in your relationships? It also can affect your choices. If you don't have confidence in yourself, you won't believe that you can do those hard things, like go to college, go on trips, get that promotion. You won't believe that you can get better, because you will settle for where you are, because you won't have that love and that confidence and that self-esteem that you can do it. You will believe that you are basic. You will believe that you are too much. You will believe that you can't do it. You will believe those negative things over the positive things. And lastly, it affects your mental health. If you don't have self-love, it affects your mental health, because it can cause you to feel depressed and anxious, because you just keep seeking the next thing and the next person to give you the love that you have to give yourself. It'll keep you depressed, because you are depressed that you don't feel that love that's on Instagram. You're not supposed to feel that love that's on Instagram. Give yourself love. Give yourself what you need. And then the rest will come to you. It can cause us to have unhealthy coping skills. When we don't love ourselves, we start to find it in other ways. As I mentioned, you can overwork, people please. But also, it can cause us to find the peace and the happiness and the love and smoking and drinking and vaping. We can get addicted to things like porn and sex and all these things. So self-love, as I mentioned at the beginning, plays a big factor in our life and our decisions and what routes we take, who we allow in, who we want to be around, things we get addicted to. All that plays a factor. So some ways that we can increase self-love. Increase self-awareness. Become self-aware. Become aware of what triggers you, what makes you happy, what makes you sad, the things you've been through, everything. Become aware. Be aware in this moment right now, but aware of who you are overall. The more you find and learn about yourself, the more aware you are in this moment, the more aware you are about who you are, will help you, because then you'll start to learn things about yourself that you never knew, and that can help you start to accept who you are, because self-love is about accepting. It's not all peaches and rainbows. It's tough. You're going to start to dig a little deeper about things that you don't like about yourself, but becoming aware of them is the first step, because how can we fix something? How can we work on something if we aren't aware of it? Maybe you didn't even understand self-love before this episode. Maybe now that you're aware of it, you could start working on it. If we're not aware of a thing, we can't change it. We can't fix it. We can't overcome anything. We have to be aware of it first, and then we can move forward. Another step is to accept you for you. God made you for a reason. God made you for a reason. Meaning, yes, it might feel like you're too much. It might feel like you messed up too much. Maybe it feels like you're too late. You're too young. You're too old. You're too... Whatever it is, you have to accept you. Remember, accepting doesn't mean you love it. It doesn't mean that you agree with it. It just means you accept it. Okay, I accept that I struggle with anxiety. Okay, I accept that I struggle with depression. I accept that I might have to start going to therapy. I accept that I didn't have the best childhood. I accept whatever your statement is. Just say it. I accept that it happened. I accept that I struggle financially. Whatever it is. These can be some of your examples, but whatever it is, accept it, because we got to acknowledge it. We have to become aware of it and accept it. Accept that it happened. If we keep playing like nothing ever happened, like we never struggle with these things, like all this is not there, then we can't work on it. Be compassionate. Be compassionate toward yourself. This is hard work. This is some of the hardest work I think I've ever done, because it's hard to face your flaws. It's hard to accept things that you never... It's hard. This healing's hard. Self-work is hard. Self-love. This whole journey is just tough. So be compassionate, meaning there's going to be good days and bad days, but just give yourself that grace that some days It might feel like it's super easy and you're so proud of yourself for going through the healing journey. And some days it's going to feel like, why did I do this? Some days it's going to be like, I can't stand myself right now. But it's about giving yourself that compassion and just still moving forward, still accepting yourself, still not putting too much pressure on yourself, still just having that compassion and understanding that you're doing the best that you can. I will forever say the statement to you. Do your best. Your best is good enough. If you did your best, then that's all you can do. But be compassionate. It's not going to be easy. You're going to have good days and bad days. It's going to be triggering. You're going to cry. It's going to be emotional. I can say that as I started to discover self-love for myself, very emotional, because it becomes emotional when you start to develop the love for yourself and realize all the times you didn't love yourself. And because of the times you didn't love yourself, those decisions you made, the places you settled, the people you settled with, the things you said to yourself, the choices you made, it's so hard, but you have to be compassionate, realize you did the best you could back then with what you knew. But now that you know these things, now you can move forward. But it's hard. It's so emotional. So you're not alone if you feel that way right now. Another step, forgive yourself. Forgive yourself for the times you didn't say no. Forgive yourself for the times that you settled. Forgive yourself for the times that you were rude to yourself. Forgive yourself for the times that you didn't respect your boundaries. Forgive yourself for the times that you didn't stand up for yourself. You have to forgive yourself because you did the best you could with what you knew. And the thing about this is not to beat yourself up about the past, because you can't change the past. You cannot. But it's about accepting what happened and learning from it so that your now can be better. Forgive yourself. You did the best you could. Setting boundaries, like I said, saying no to them, to that thing, to that plan, to that event, to that person, whatever it might be saying yes to you. Saying no to going out is saying yes to you staying in. Saying no to that relationship is saying yes to you working on yourself more. A no is a yes somewhere. So sometimes we have to say no. And sometimes we have to set boundaries to people and things and places. Even work. You might say, especially if you're an overworker, you might now start setting boundaries that when it's 8 o'clock, when I clock in, I'm going to focus as much as I can from 8 to 5 or whatever your time is. And at 5, I'm turning my phone off, my work phone off, and I'm leaving instead of staying the extra 4 hours. And then maybe when they call you on the weekends, maybe your boundary is I'm not working on weekends, or maybe I can only do every other weekend because I got to do stuff for myself and my family and my friends or whatever. So setting boundaries is important. And lastly, don't compare yourself to others, because you're not them and they're not you. You're you for a reason and they're who they are for a reason. So don't compare your journey. Don't compare your life. Don't compare your expectations. Don't compare anything to anyone else, because you're supposed to be you for a reason. So I hope this episode starts your year off right. I will say it's hard, extremely hard, but you can do this. And how I know is because I got there and I never thought I could get there, but I'm there and I'm learning every day, and I believe you can do it too. I hope going forward you learn to love yourself. The same energy you give to others, the same love and respect, the same kindness, the validation, all that. I hope you give it to yourself, because you deserve it. You deserve to be loved. You deserve to love yourself. You deserve to validate yourself. I say all this from experience. It really does make a difference in how you talk to yourself. It really makes a difference in how you see yourself, in the connection you have with yourself, because it opens so many doors. It changes your world. You are a person too, and just like a person has needs, your needs deserve to be met, and you have to give them to yourself too. When you give them to yourself, when you give yourself that love and acceptance and all those things, watch your world change. Honestly, I will say one of the things that helped me with self-love is God, because sometimes we can be so hard on ourselves and we can say, I can't be loved. I can't love myself for that. I messed up. I can't love myself for that. I'm too much. I can't love myself for that. I'm this and that. So I'm going to ask you 3 questions. If God can forgive you, then why can't you forgive yourself? If God can accept you for you, then why can't you accept you for you? And lastly, if God can love you for you, then why can't you love yourself? And the more I got closer with God and I reflected on how much God loves me, it led me to me loving myself, because that is the truth. If God can do these things, He forgave me, He accepts me, and He loves me, and He has a plan for me, then why can't I see that in myself? And I just want to leave you with those questions, those 3 questions. He can forgive you, accept you, and love you. So ask yourself those questions. Why can't you do that for yourself? Because you can. And that's been a big part of my journey, is just remembering what God says about certain situations, because sometimes it is hard. Sometimes we feel like we can't do it, but it's like, if He can love me, I can love myself. And I'm going to tell you, once you get that self-love, once you start learning to love yourself and stand up for yourself and respect yourself and give yourself the things that you need, things will become better. No, you're not going to have the perfect world, because no one's world is perfect, but your world will be different. The people you hang out will be different. Your relationships will be different. Your environment will be different. And sometimes different can be scary. But when we start to love ourselves, we start to gain that self-esteem. We start to learn our self-worth. We start to realize what we deserve and what will help us grow in life. And sometimes, even though it's different, it might be what's needed. So I encourage you to start your journey, as you start this year, to start reflecting on how you can start loving yourself today. Maybe your first step to self-love is the therapy. Maybe your first step is praying about it. Because I'll tell you, I prayed about it, because if you don't have self-love, sometimes we don't know where to start, and it can be overwhelming. I pray about it. Ask God to help me to start loving myself. Help me to start working on those aspects of my life that I need to work on, so that I can have love for myself, so that I can accept myself for me, so that I can be where I'm supposed to be, so that I can work towards my purpose, so that I can be around people that will also love me for me and accept me for me. All right, guys. I will talk to you guys next week. Have a great day. Bye. Thank you for listening to the Breaking Moment podcast. If this information was helpful, please share it with others. And if you enjoy listening, subscribe to the podcast so you can get the latest episodes. You can listen to the Breaking Moment podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. Until then, I will see y'all next week.